Welcome to the Future of Less Work, the podcast where we're piecing together the transformation of work one conversation at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today we're talking about a role that's never been more important and never more misunderstood. I'm talking about managers. We've spent years equipping managers with toolkits, playbooks, dashboards, KPIs. We've trained them to be servant leaders, inclusive leaders, data-driven leaders. But none of that matters if we ignore the hidden forces that derail the most intentioned managers. Pressure. Pressure to deliver, pressure to perform, pressure to never let the team down. My guest today argues that pressure is not just an emotion, it's a trap. A trap that turns your strength into weaknesses. To unpack that, I'm joined today by Sabina Nawaz, global executive coach and author of the new book, You're the Boss, Become the Manager You Want to Be and Others Need. Sabina has spent the last 20 years coaching CEOs and senior leaders at places like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and the United Nations. And her new book draws on over 12,000 pages of 360-degree feedback, shows us where managers fall off track and how they can find their way back. Sabina, welcome to the Future of Less Work.
Thank you so much, Nirit. I'm really looking forward to digging in here.
In your new book, you suggest there's one revealing question that can often predict whether someone will succeed as a manager, and I really love that. You say, are you willing to change yourself before trying to change others? Why does that matter?
The more successful you are, and chances are, as you've gotten promoted up the management chain, you didn't do that by not succeeding. So the more successful you are, the more it's normal for you, for us as human beings to think we are right, we're doing something well. And you know what? Most of the time we are. So we jump to conclusions, we make assumptions, and we try to fix everything around us. After all, aren't we paid to fix problems, to problem solve, to coach other people, to grow them? In other words, thinking about the problems and the people around us as deficient in some way, and that we are here to make the world better.
Yeah, which is, so I'm going to get to what you say about that in your book, but that's these days of all times, right? That's actually even probably more dangerous than ever because I don't think managers have answers.
Who has answers today? Who is going to address huge political divides? What's the solution? By when will we have an answer? Global warming, all sorts of things, massive, massive AI disruption, massive changes. No one has sole dominion over an answer. There are no answers. We have to experiment our way through it. So it really is about first shifting our mindset of I'm the sole provider of everything to this needs to be done collectively. And there are many things as a manager, particularly nowadays, where we need to bring in the collective intelligence of the organization and grow their capability to ask the right questions, not lead with answers, but ask the right questions, to think at that next level so that one, it reduces the pressure on us of having to carry it all. And two, it gives us a fighting chance to succeed in this world.
I spent 3 decades in the high tech multinationals world, and we promote managers because they're the best workers, right?
Yes.
Whatever their area of specialty is. So we kind of tell them you had all the right answers, and so here you got a promotion. That doesn't sound like it's going to work in the way you describe it.
Exactly. Because when we promote them, see, I think promotions are sometimes the most dangerous times in our career.
Why is that?
Of course, you celebrate and all of that, but once the bubblies settle, here's why. Because we've told you, yes, we're promoting you because you've got this skill. And once we get to that state, we haven't changed, but the state has changed. The position has changed. And the next that are craning upward don't view your strengths the same way you do. And guess what? They view it less charitably. But because you have more power than them, they won't tell you about that. Let me give you a couple of concrete examples. Actually, Nirit, if you're willing to play, why don't you tell me one or two of your signature strengths. What would you say are huge strengths of yours?
I see the big system picture,
Great.
and I'm also able to dive into the details.
Great. So you are able to telescope in and out
Yes.
the situation. All right, great. So now imagine that you were a manager and now you've been promoted to a manager of managers. Potentially, that diving into the details is going to be viewed as what? Micromanagement.
Micromanaging. And
Exactly.
actually, I have a story for you. So I was a manager of managers, and I managed a few hundred people
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
And one day, somebody reported to me who herself was a manager of managers. Right?
Yes.
She comes into the conference room, closes the door, and says, "Okay." And she knew me really well. She worked for me for lots of years. So she said, "I'm going to tell you what the situation I'm in, and I don't need you to tell me what to do. I just need you to listen." And that was one of my management, my personality, my whatever, right? Aha moments, because
Right.
she basically told me, "I just need somebody to listen. And I know what you're going to immediately do is problem
Yes.
solve this for me."
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And how cool that you had that relationship where she could set that up front. What a great way to manage up. And we know that many times we don't get that.
Yeah.
And so we end up jumping in, problem solving, and then people are thinking of you as micromanaging or not empathetic, not listening
Yeah.
and holding the space,
Yeah. So
right?
the funny way you're actually saying being a helpful boss is actually
Not helpful.
leading you down the path to micromanagement, which isn't necessarily what you should be doing.
Exactly, exactly. Now that's just one thing. So a strength of being able to scroll down into the details can look as like micromanagement. A strength of being strategic can look like you're being manipulative. So think about like someone like you who can see the big picture. You go to meetings, maybe not you, but this actually happened with a client of mine who's also very strategic. And she would not speak up initially because she wanted to see where people were, understand what pain points they had so she could contribute in a strategic fashion. Well, as she got promoted, people thought, she's so manipulative. She's watching everyone else and which way the wind is blowing. And only then is she going to speak up. She's
Okay.
not going to stick her neck out. Let's say you are very passionate. You're going to come across as overly emotional. If you're really calm, on the other hand, you might come across as detached, aloof, uninterested. So, no matter what your strength is, it has the potential to be seen in a very different light. Let me make very clear this does not mean you stop doing the things that you're strong at.
So
You
how do you so what do you do? So you are
yes,
strategic, or you are very
yes,
passionate. What do you
yes.
do?
You communicate differently. You communicate more explicitly. You know, this colleague of yours who has worked with you for a long time knows you, so that you have a shortcut. But the higher you go, the fewer people know you directly. They have much smaller points of intersection where they know you, and they jump to conclusions, just like you probably do about them.
Yes.
So, so it's about being very, very explicit about how you're operating. There's a tool in my book called a mapping tool, which is essentially a user manual to you. When I ask a lot of questions, it's usually in the first week of me getting to know a project. Once I understand it at a detail level, you will not see me going back into the details. This is just from my understanding. Or when I'm frowning, that's my thinking face. It's not that I'm upset with what you're saying. I like to think through something and I go internal to myself. And when I go internal to myself, it has a rather severe uh,
Yeah.
expression
Yeah,
to my.
it's actually fascinating because I was thinking that we always tell management organizations, right, communicate frequently, because if you don't communicate, people fill in the gaps by I
Exactly.
don't want to say making things up, but assuming the worst, if you will. And so
Exactly.
you're taking that into the relationship space and saying, as a manager, if you don't tell people your operating system, your how you like to communicate, why you do things the way you do, they're going to fill in the gaps and, interpret it in ways that you didn't intend for it to be interpreted.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And Narit, you just hit upon something really key that I want to deconstruct a little bit more, which is power. So it's pressure that causes us to act in ways, when not managed well, that are destructive to other people. And then power insulates and isolates us from the effect we're having on people, and worse, the harm that we might be creating. But power is also like a broken volume knob. So if I don't communicate
Mm.
explicitly, every firstly, everything that's coming up to us is milder than what people are actually experiencing. It's cushioned in praise. When they say, oh, that was great, it means I've started a secret group chat about how much that sucked. But also everything that's coming from up on down, as you know from your own experience, the volume gets turned way up.
Yeah.
And
And
people,
distorted in a way by people who
exactly,
explain you.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'm sitting here thinking, um, I don't know if I wasn't going to bring AI so soon, but I can't avoid it. So we're talking these days about shifting to, or management needing to shift to manage teams that are made of people and technology, right, and tools, and
Absolutely.
understanding what you offload and what you allocate to whom. And I'm wondering, does this make this easier or even more complicated?
I think, at least initially, it's going to make it way more complicated. Maybe there is a point that we reach when it might make things easier. But that complication, in my mind, comes from this is completely untrodden ground. Back to nobody has a single answer.
Yes.
How do you manage agents and humans? How do you manage organic and inorganic intelligence
Yes, and
at the
and I
same
think
time?
we don't know, right? We don't really understand this. And I keep thinking there was a statement in your book that I thought was really interesting, that busyness is a choice.
Mm.
And I'm thinking about this in this context because it feels to me like we're measuring productivity in terms of busyness.
Exactly. Exactly. We're measuring the light, not the heat. We're measuring the what, not the so what. And so, yeah, how do we navigate this in this new world? What is the choice we're going to make? Are we going to get spun up all on our uh, axles here as we think about this new world? Or actually, what I encourage people to do is, what instead of falling in that busyness trap, is to do nothing. Do
Hmm.
nothing. This is a practice called blank space, which takes 2 hours contiguous, back to back, once a week during the work week, where you are unplugged, you're not reading, you're not talking to anyone, you're certainly not online, to allow you the space to think through what really is the path forward.
Wow. So, okay. So you're saying basically turn off the volume,
Yes,
not even low, but off, right? Of everything that's coming at you, whether it's chats, emails, content. This isn't like, because I always say take time to train yourself, take time to find new things. You're saying, no, not even that, right? It's not even take time to find new AI tools. Just, just to think, just to let,
just
let simmer the kind of the situation that you're in and what to do with it.
exactly right, Narit. Because what does research show? When do our brightest aha moments come? In the shower, on our commute, during workouts, where we have turned off the noise so that the signal can get amplified. The signal is there at all times. The more pressure we feel, most of us, the more likely we are to hunker down and do more, right? More to do lists, furious typing and emailing and meetings and getting up in the middle of the night with our brain on fire. The antidote to that is to slow it down. because all that franticness is just generating more franticness.
Yeah, and I think also you're saying, and they've actually, I think they've done neurological studies on this. If you shut down, right, you'll suddenly see new paths, right? That's the this idea that if you lose your favorite necklace in the house, you should stop looking and it'll show up, right? It's based on actual real research. Then this idea that we need to, and there's so much disruption these days that there's no way you can figuring out using the standard tools and the standard systems.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And those pathways are already well worn, right? Neurons that fire together, wire together, as the saying goes. It's about developing new neural pathways. And
Yeah.
that takes some time and space. It takes silence.
Yeah, that's actually fascinating. Another one that I thought fascinating, that because it's like against a lot of things that we usually think about, is you talk about a yes list. So not
Mhm.
just what you're saying no, because you told us not to be helpful for a second. I mean, you told us, don't give everybody the answers. That's not your job. Why do I need a yes list, and what is it?
Yeah. Well, to talk about yes listener, I have to start with micro habits. Micro habits are composed of two words, micro and habit. In other words, things you do at a truly microscopic level, and I'll give you an example to show you exactly how micro I mean, and habitual, as in they have to be done every single day. So, for example, let's say somebody says, well, I'm under so much pressure. I haven't worked out in 2 years, and I just really need to improve my physical well-being so that I can be more attentive at work. Great. What do you want to do about it? Well, I guess I should start going to the gym for 30 minutes each day. Now, before they go any further, I'm like, okay, stop right there. We know that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, no, no, I'm very good. Once I make up my mind, I'm like, great, you can try that, but I want you to try something different as well. Let's have that time. Okay. All right. Now let's have it again and have it again. As you know, this is exponentially going to get smaller and smaller until we get to one push up or one squat or one jumping jack. Now they have this laugh. And we know then you've hit that truly micro level where they go, of course, Sabina, I can do one jumping jack. Like, great. Why don't you do that every day for the next 3 weeks and then we'll talk? So you take 2 or 3 micro habits that you might be working on, you put them on a list, on a spreadsheet or a table where each row is your micro habit and then the columns are days. At the end of the day on this yes list, you say yes or no. Now, the beauty of it being so tiny is that even at the end of the day, as you're starting to fill it out and you're about to say no to that jumping jack because you somehow the day got
Say,
away
okay,
from
okay, let's do it, because then I'll say yes, right?
you. Exactly. And why is this so important? This is again proven that we like to build on our successes. How excited am I going to be if everything I've done doesn't feel like I've achieved anything, and now let me get up and repeat the same thing? Versus, I got my gold star, I got my positive reinforcement, I was able to say yes to these things. I'm excited to try it again. This is why in gamification we have streaks, and
Yeah.
people will go to ends of the earth not to break those streaks. It's similar to that.
Okay. So create a micro habit. What would be management micro habits
Yeah.
that fix some of the things we talked about before?
Exactly. So one of the management micro habits would be shutting up. I affectionately ask my clients sometimes to exercise their shut up muscle. What that means is that if you're the first one in a meeting to always pop out an idea, it's less likely that anyone else will have a different idea, and certainly not one that they're going to disagree with you on. And you might be in danger of leading your team on the sole basis of that, what you thought was a brilliant idea, which ends up being a flop. So, what if instead of being the first one to speak, you're the third person to speak? A micro habit every day, only in one meeting, not always, just in one meeting, be the third person to pop out ideas. That goes on your yes list.
Okay. All right. I see. That's really, really interesting. You also had another one I wanted to hear about. What's a time portfolio?
Mm. We often say time is our most precious asset, correct?
Yeah. We talk
And
about pressure, we talk about no time, of course.
exactly. And we are also are not quite as mindful about our time. Now, some people manage their money in a portfolio. They say, okay, I have this savings. How much do I invest in what kind of investment, high risk, low risk, etc., based on my goals? What if we did the same thing with our time? What if you chunk out the big categories where you spend time as a manager? So it could be managing my team, which is my staff meetings and performance reviews and so on, one on ones. It could be time upward, attending my manager's staff meetings and doing things for them. Maybe I have a job where I'm also externally facing. So conferences, external talks is another chunk. Project reviews might be a fourth chunk, and a fifth chunk could be communication, email, Teams messages, instant messages, all of that kind of stuff. All right, so I've got my buckets. Now, approximately, what percentage of time am I spending on each of these?
So you're basically asking, am I spending time on the right things, right? If I spend all my time on
Exactly.
um, reactively responding to emails
Yes.
and chats versus sitting proactively to strategize.
Exactly. Just about every one of my clients, when we do this initial assessment, they go, oh my gosh, I'm spending way too much time in emails and chats, right?
Right.
Now, here's the mistake you can make. Let's say you're spending 30% of your time on that. And you go, I'd like that to get to 15%. The mistake would be to try and make that jump from 30 to 15. Again, think small. So from 30, maybe we're going to go to 28. And what's my next step? Next
Yeah,
step is mental.
because I'm thinking, okay, but you react to all these emails because they're in your inbox. What does that mean? That you
Yes.
what? You don't respond?
Or do I create better filters? Do I turn off notifications? Do I turn on email 3 times, 4 times, maybe even 5 times a day as opposed to all the time? I'll tell you a secret. It's not that big a secret, but I do not have my work email on my phone. I just don't. So if someone texts me and talks about a meeting time, I'm like, can you send me email? Or I will respond to you later today when I'm back on email because I don't have access to that on my phone. So by removing access, it keeps me honest. It's
Yeah.
so
You're making sure you're not on it all the time.
exactly.
So we talked about micro behaviors. I'm wondering from all your experience, what's that one micro behavior that you think separates great managers from just managers?
Oh, what a great question. I would have to still go to, well, I'm going to give you two. One is around power and the other is around pressure, because, of course, those are the twin forces that I talk about in the framework of my book. Around power, it is that being the third person to pop in an idea in a meeting once a day. And on the pressure side, I talk about, we discuss blank space as 2 hours a week, but what about 10 seconds a day? 10 seconds, no more, just 10 seconds. And if that becomes too much, where you find you're not successful, go down to 5 seconds. 10 seconds a day where you're deliberately stepping away and unplugging and just being quiet.
So 10 seconds doesn't even require that you do anything. It's like end of the meeting, you
Yes,
shut down. Before you go to the next thing, just pause.
exactly.
Why is that so powerful?
And because what do most of us do at the end of the meeting? We immediately pivot to our second monitor and check what came in on email or Slack or whatever. So it's really powerful to start building that muscle. It's a muscle building exercise to just give ourselves that tiny oasis. And believe it or not, people say that has had a huge impact on them. Just that 10
Wow, I'm going to
seconds.
adopt that one. That doesn't sound that hard.
Exactly. And that is why, because that 2 hours sounds so hard and so unattainable. Start with 10 seconds. And if it starts to give you good hormones coursing through your body, that dopamine, then you're going to go, oh, yeah, I want more of that. I'm going to get to 15 seconds and so on.
Okay, awesome. So I have another question for you. So if as you're looking at this kind of changes in the world of work, what's the one thing you think leaders should remember that in the context of the workplace keeps changing? What should we do differently?
Hmm. Two things come to mind. One is that leadership is moving from positional to people.
Mhm.
That is, I shouldn't be the one saying, here's what we should do. The vision, often people go, oh, well, until the vision comes from up on high, there's nothing we can do. We're going to have to figure out a way to co-create it, to solicit and ignite that level of thinking, inquiry from the collective. And that goes to my second point, which is closely tied. I talk about this trap called the sole provider trap. That's SOLE, as in I'm
Mm.
the only one who can provide the answers. I'm the only one who has the experience. I can do this faster, better, etc. And instead of that, thinking about how do I use the delegation dial? And by delegation dial, I mean a more nuanced approach to delegation. Just about every single client I coach, and this includes CEOs at multinational corporations, get delegation dead wrong because they treat it like a switch. Here, I'm delegating to you, go do it. And then the person gives you something on Friday night. It's not what you expect. There goes your weekend. And now you're jumping in like that helicopter boss, and it obliterates any trust and communication that you had
Yeah,
with this.
both ways, right? Because you also won't delegate again because you've learned a lesson. Yeah. So
Complete.
what's the answer?
The dial is notching up delegation one step at a time. So based on the other person's experience, knowledge, skill, confidence in getting the job done. I had a client who decided before I came into the picture that he would delegate to his senior C-suite executive a presentation to the board. And that meant he would not meddle with it, he wouldn't micromanage it. But the day before the board meeting, they'd do a dry run. It was a disaster. And now that day became a huge crisis center before they could present to the board. They had already sent the initial materials to somebody, to the board liaison, and so on. So, how do you prevent that? Well, even though this person is really senior, you have been presenting to the board the whole time. You've been hogging the microphone. So, how do you expect this person to suddenly become perfect at presenting to the board? So, the dial is, instead of just giving it to them, first you just do and have them watch. Then you tell them very, very prescriptively what the steps are. Then you teach them. This would be the equivalent of, instead of making red lines in the document, you put comments in the document. Here's why we do this way. Then you coach them, ask them questions. What else did you consider? What is the downside to this proposal if you are successful? So on. And
So
only then.
is that a multi-phase process? So basically, the first board member, I'd say next time you're going to start doing this, watch what I do. The second time you say, okay, I want you to tell me what you would have done. The third time you say, okay, help me build this. Is that what you're meaning?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay.
And it's only the fifth stage of the delegation dial, which is what most people end up doing as the first thing.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So, in line with your micro moments idea here, I always close these episodes with a question versus an answer because we're used to giving answers, right? So, what's the one question you think we should be asking for
Yes.
in the context of the future of work?
Oh, every action as a manager has a reaction on your people. How will you become more aware of the reaction that your action creates?
Okay. Awesome. So, it feels to me like a dial again, kind of put the volume up on the observing the effects you have on others is
Yes.
basically what you're telling us to do.
Exactly.
Fabulous. Sabina, thank you so much for joining me today for this deeply human conversation. For more on Sabina and her book, You're the Boss, check out the links in the podcast description. And to our listeners, thank you for joining The Future of Less Work. And remember, your best people do not work because they have to. They don't work because you tell them to, nor because you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because by working for you, they're also achieving what's important to them in life. Till next time.